over the next couple of videos, we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence. We always see online people talking about EQ, and I don't think people really understand what it truly means. So I want to go over the basics of what it is, and then in the future, go over how we can cultivate and improve our emotional intelligence. We're going to be referencing Daniel Goleman, who has 4 domains and 12 competencies in his framework for emotional intelligence. He's the one that popularized emotional intelligence in 1995 with his book, Emotional Intelligence, and I thought he would be the best person to reference for this. So there are 4 different domains: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management, and each one has a different amount of competencies within it. Today, we're going to be going over self-awareness with the primary competency, emotional self-awareness. So first, we need to understand, what is self-awareness? Self-awareness is the ability to recognize and understand your emotions as they happen, accurately perceive the internal forces driving your behavior, identify the impact your emotions have on thinking, actions, and relationships in your life, and allows you to stay connected to your core values, beliefs, and emotional patterns. In Goleman's own words, he said, emotional self-awareness is the ability to recognize our emotions and the impact that they have, their effects. So as we dive into the competency for emotional awareness, we need to understand the core characteristics of what that means. The first characteristic of emotional self-awareness is real-time emotional recognition. This is noticing feelings as they start to arise within us and being able to track changes in an emotional state during interactions or certain situations. Maybe you're in a situation where you start to feel overwhelmed, you're starting to have a panic attack. Catching that panic attack in the beginning of that moment, rather than allowing yourself to spiral into a full panic attack, is when you start to recognize your emotions in real time. This is something that is my own personal experience on how I've cultivated that skill. I used to go into full-blown panic attacks, and now I'm able to catch it right as it begins without even going into a full, chaotic emotional storm, as one would say. So being able to check in with yourself and understand what's going on in real time. The second core characteristic of emotional self-awareness is having an emotional vocabulary. This is going to allow you to accurately name complex emotional experiences, which moves us from saying basic labels like I'm really mad or I'm fine to emotions that are more complex, like I'm feeling resentful or I feel very dismissed right now. You're making me feel unseen. So taking more basic emotional labels and driving deeper to understand what that specific emotion truly is. Because when we look at this, we want to look at emotions like a tree. You have sadness, but what does sadness mean? You could have depression. You could have underwhelmed. You could have bored. Some people experience sadness when they're bored. So really understanding what that true feeling and emotion is, so that way you can express those emotions in a way that makes sense for others around you and to yourself. The third core characteristic of emotional self-awareness is a mind-emotion connection, which is understanding how emotions influence our own thoughts, behaviors, and our decision-making. An example of this is recognizing how your nervous system is fueling procrastination when you get into that freeze state. I used to get really emotionally overwhelmed and angry and resentful. And so I just moved to a new city. That's not funny, but I literally would just be so over everyone, and I'd just be so disappointed in so many people and so mad and so resentful that I'd just be like, I'm moving. No notice. I'd do it in a week. That's a behavior from my emotions because I didn't want to address how upset I was. I just didn't want to even experience it. I just wanted to get away. And so I just picked up my life and moved. And I had no idea why I did that until I understood why I did that. So I had to learn how to recognize what was triggering that because I couldn't keep doing that as I got older. The fourth core characteristic of emotional self-awareness leads us to pattern recognition. So pattern awareness, I had a pattern with that, picking myself up and moving myself to different cities for fun. I think I moved 8 times in my 20s just because, why not? But pattern awareness is identifying recurring emotional responses or habits across certain situations. An example of this is noticing that you become defensive during any type of critical feedback. For me, it was running away from my problems. Anytime I experienced too much adversity, I was like, I don't have time for you people. I'm leaving. Bye. Peace out. Honestly, best case scenario for the way that I used to manage my emotions, because I used to be very unmanaged because I grew up in an abusive home. So I like didn't learn this skill, right? Picking up my life and just like moving away was so much better than what could have happened, because I could have like just like gone off like a big explosive, and that would have been worse. So I'm glad that I coped in the way that I did, but I didn't understand that there was a pattern with it, and I had to recognize that pattern, become aware of that pattern. The fifth core component of it is impact awareness. So recognizing how our mood or emotional expression affects others and taking accountability for our emotional tone in personal or even group settings. This is something that we don't really see on social media. We see people talk about this in the way like they want to have whatever emotional tone they want, and like you should just accept it. Like I can be as mean as I want to you, and you should do what I say, and you should accept it because I am mad or I am upset about X, Y, and Z. And that is just something that shows a lack of emotional intelligence. Because if you want your point to be conveyed, if you want people to take you seriously, if you want people to understand you, you have to understand how you communicate things is going to impact them. You can't just say whatever you want and say, well, I'm telling the truth and you should take it, and expect them to respond the way they want. You can say whatever you want. Free speech, baby. But if you want people to understand you, you have to take accountability for the way you present that information. You have to understand the way it impacts others. And a good way of starting with that is by starting with yourself and thinking about how other people impact you with their emotions. Well, last but not least, for the sixth core component is value alignment insight. And this is understanding when emotions are triggered because of personal value is being honored or violated. This is why I would move, because for me personally, I would have a lot of anger when people would attempt to treat me in a certain way, or if I was in a workplace that I didn't like. I've always been like, well, I'm just leaving because what's the point? There's so many jobs. I can just get a new job, which is true. Honestly, it is true. But I had to understand what that was stemming from. It was stemming from the reason that I felt like my integrity was either being compromised or I was being, kind of like violated in the way that I wanted to be treated. You have to make sure that you're putting yourself in situations and understanding where you align with your value in society. So now that we understand the core components of emotional awareness, we are going to look at real world examples so that way you can really understand what it means to implement this in the real world. Emotional identification is going to be the first function that we look at. And this is going to allow you to understand the root cause of what is causing the emotions in real time. So an example of this is like feeling drained after a meeting. This could be for a couple of reasons. Sometimes it could be because you're just like really tired. That's like a very surface level reason. Other times it could be because you're realizing you feel very unheard or dismissed at work. So being able to identify what the emotion is saying to you and then identifying what the root cause is a way that this can be applied in real life. When we're looking at cognitive emotional alignment, this can show up in the real world in the way of having like a leader recognizing that maybe their anger about a missed deadline stems from a personal value around responsibility, not just the missed work itself. This is something that I experience a lot. Like, I'm a perfectionist. It's annoying. It's not something that like, I hate people who are like, oh, you're a perfectionist. No, it's literal torture. I literally am being tortured every single day because I have to be perfect, and it makes me mad when I don't do things the right way, and I know they should be done the right way, and I experience the emotion of frustration and anger through that, and it's because of my emotional and cognitive alignment not being in the right place, because nobody is perfect. And so I have a personal value of perfection, and when other people can't reach the level that I am at when I'm working with them, that can cause me to kind of be, annoyed to an extent, because why aren't you doing that? But I have to remember, like, this is about me. It's not about them. So that way, other people aren't experiencing the emotions that I'm feeling from the own things that I'm having to work on a daily basis, which leads us to understanding behavioral insight. So understanding why we react in certain situations in the real world. So like if you become defensive when you're receiving feedback, you can recognize that this is linked to maybe your childhood experiences of criticisms. For me, with my own perfectionism, like that is what it's linked to. I had to be perfect. Like if I was perfect, I might be okay for a day. If I did everything right, and if I was able to spot everything, and I was able to play the game of war better than everyone else around me, I could probably go through the day without being completely berated and destroyed. And that is something that I had to learn because I didn't understand that that was triggering me into this perfectionism, but it gave me that behavioral insight in real life situations throughout my entire life because my perfectionism shows up in every area of my life. And of course, last but not least, the relational impact is a really big one. I also think performance influence is another one because if we understand our emotions, then we can perform better in certain areas of our life. But relationship impact is really the biggest one because when you recognize that your mood is affecting other people or affecting your ability to make decisions and communication dynamics within those relationships, then you can understand where you're falling short and where things are not going right. I mean, I think if you've ever been with somebody where it didn't work out, there was probably something that wasn't going well. I've been in relationships. I've had relationship dynamics where as much as I tried to communicate my feelings and what was going on, there was always a disconnect between us. And if their mood was off, then that would impact the way that I was receiving what they were saying. If my mood was off, then that would impact the way that they would receive me. So really understanding like how our self-awareness can allow us to move better in our relationships is, I think, one of the best ways to apply self-awareness in real time. We're looking at people who have high self-awareness. These are some of the signs that you should look out for. These people express emotions clearly and responsibly. They rarely get caught off guard by their own reactions. They understand the why behind their emotional states. They're able to discuss their emotions without blaming others. And they have a very in sync understanding of their values and their outer actions. So what they truly believe inside is a good representation of how they act in the world. They don't tend to show up through hypocrisy. We see this a lot in today's world. There's a lot of hypocrisy in today's world. Like one thing you'll be on board for, but something else that will reflect that on an opposing side of your personal views. You would not hold the same morals and ethics. People with high self-awareness will have congruence between their inner values and their actions with every topic that they discuss. These are people that will frequently reflect on patterns and past emotional responses so that way they can understand themselves, improve themselves, and get better. When we're looking at people who have lower self-awareness, these are people who are frequently surprised maybe by their emotional outbursts. They struggle with naming their emotions or explaining what they're feeling. They react more impulsively, so they are more reactive. They're unaware of their own internal triggers. They tend to blame others for their emotional state rather than taking accountability and ownership for their emotion. They tend to miss how their energy and tone affects others around them, and they sometimes just like don't even care. And they make decisions that feel really confusing or regretful in hindsight. Just because you have lower self-awareness doesn't mean it's something that you can't improve. So if any of these do stick out to you, that's okay. Recognizing them is the first step in moving forward, and that's amazing. All you have to do is recognize it, and then we can start to implement practices. In the future, I'll be coming out with a video on how we can improve this area of our emotional intelligence. But just know it's good to know where you're at. And if you have high levels of self-awareness, then, I hope that you're helping others around you. Now we understand what self-awareness is and emotional self-awareness. Why does self-awareness really even matter? Well, this is kind of like the foundation of all emotional intelligence because you can't manage or improve your emotions if you don't understand them. It allows you to make better decisions. Emotions inform you. They shouldn't control you or your choices. They should be data points so that way you understand what's going on in your life. That way you can make the right decisions moving forward. They can allow you to improve your relationships. So having self-awareness prevents emotional projection or different types of miscommunication. It allows you to be someone who can be in a place of authentic leadership. You're promoting honesty, accountability, and self-regulation when you're able to have this self-awareness around how you're moving through the world. And it increases your self-trust. So the more you understand yourself, the more you can rely on yourself. And being more self-aware allows you to understand yourself at a deeper level. A few of the misconceptions that we tend to see with self-awareness can be things like it's just introspection, but true self-awareness includes real emotional tracking and impact of awareness, not just introspecting. Like you have to make sure that you're logging this, you're understanding this, you're tracking this, you're seeing your growth, right? Another misconception could be if I know my strengths and weaknesses, I'm self-aware. That's self-knowledge, but self-awareness involves more moment-to-moment understanding of yourself. So that's kind of like the first step. Like that's a first level of being aware of yourself. I would look at it like there's like tiers of layers, but just because you understand the baseline doesn't mean that you have like true self-awareness. Like you understand yourself, which is self-knowledge, but you don't have that awareness in real time as to what's going on and that innate knowing of what's happening in real time within your body. And then last but not least, my final misconception is self-aware people are always calm. No, that is not true. Not true at all. People who are very self-aware experience very strong emotions. They just don't become unconsciously driven by them. So they don't emotionally react uncontrolled. You can have really big emotions and be self-aware as to what's going on. I have really, really big emotions. I have panic attacks. And I can tell you step by step as the panic attack starts to begin in my body. I can feel it start to go up within my body. I can feel it radiate throughout all of my joints and beings. And if I want to allow myself to get to that point, I can describe everything that's going on in real time as I'm experiencing these emotions. But how I react because of the panic attack isn't going to just be unconscious. I'm going to sit on the floor. I'm going to take deep breaths. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to control the way I respond. If I'm in a situation with somebody else, I'm going to say, hey, I need to take a step back because I'm not going to allow that to influence my relationships. You can have really big emotions, but you just don't allow them to control you because you're self-aware as to what's happening in the moment and you're able to get ahead of it before it impacts you. And that concludes our overview on self-awareness and emotional self-awareness for emotional intelligence. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you resonate with a lot of this? Are there areas in your life that you're currently working on with this area of emotional intelligence? I'll be coming out with a video that will allow us to have some great tactics that can help us improve these areas of our lives. So look out for that. And if you like learning about the truth behind the trends, make sure that you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We'll see you guys next time.